Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is AHMAD EZZUDDIN bin Muhammad KAMAL, metric number 1182503. Today I would like to present about the definition and the concept of prayer time in Falak Syarie. For the definition, the basis for the definition of the prayer or fast timings are the Quran and Hadith. Direct or indirect mention of the times of the daily prayers can be found in several parts of the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah verse 238, Surah An-Nisa 103, Surah Hud 114, Surah Isra 78 verse 78, Surah An-Nur verse 36, Surah Rum verse 17 and 18, Surah Qaf verse 39 and 40, and Surah Al-Insan verse 26. The fine designation of the timings is left to the practices of the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Those timings are taught to the messenger by the Jibril. He first came and they pray whenever the relevant time has just started. The next day he came again and they prayed just before time had elapsed. So he showed the time slots for each prayer and said, between these times are the times for the prayers. In a hadith is told that there is a beginning and an end of the time of each prayer. The time of the Zuhur prayer is when the sun starts to incline until the time of Asar means afternoon prayer. The time of Asar prayer is until the yellowing of the sun. The time of the Maghrib means sunset, and evening prayer begins with sunset and lasts as long as twilight. The time of the Isha night means night prayer is when the twilight disappears up to the middle of the night, and the time of the Fajr means morning prayer is from the appearance of the dawn until the time of sunrise. Then, concept of the prayer times in Falak Syarie. According to the Islamic faith, Muslims are required to perform 5 prayers per day. Each prayer time is defined in accordance with the sun's movement. The sun's movement changes every day according to its ecliptic, which is differently measured according to the perspective of prayer's location on earth, means latitude and longitude of the prayer. Calculation of the prayer times in any given city is calculated based on the city's means latitude and longitude and is measured to the nearest minute of times. For the Fajr, done when the first appearance of light becomes visible in the sky before sunrise. Sunrise, the time at which the sun first touches the horizon. For the Zuhur, the highest position of the sun in the sky during its journey from sunrise to sunset. This is when the shadow of a vertically erected stick is at its shortest all day. For Asar, some calculate it as the time at which the shadow of a vertically erected stick is equal to the length of the shadow at Zuhur prayer plus the length of the stick itself. And sunset and Maghrib, the time at the last apparent part of the sun disappears below the horizon. And last Isha, the time at which darkness falls and there is no scattered light in the sky. That's all from me. Thank you.
So I will continue about the evidence of determining prayer times. The first one in Al-Quranul Karim, in Surah An-Nisa, verse 103. A'udzubillahi minasyaitonirrajim. Fa idza qadaytumus salat fadhkurullaha qiyaman wa qu'udan wa 'ala junubikum. Fa idza tma'nantum faqimus salah inna salata kanat 'alal mu'minina kitaban mawquta. The meaning is, and when you have complete the prayer, remember Allah while you are standing, sitting or laying on your side. But when you become secure, establish the prayer. Indeed, prayer has been decreed upon the believers, a decree of specific time. Based on this verse, we can see that Allah has mentioned that the prayer times have been set, so it is not allowed for us to change the prayer times. For example, prayer times for Zuhur are when the sun begins to decline after reaching its highest point in the sky. So we must pray at that time, and we cannot perform Zuhur prayer in other prayer times. The second one in Hadith, an Abdullah bin Amru anna Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam qala waqtu zuhri idza zalati syams وكان ذل رجل كطوله ما لم يحضر العصر الوقت العصر ما لم تصفر الشمس ووقت صلاة المغرب ما لم يغب الشفق ووقت صلاة العشاء إلى نصف الليل الأوسط ووقت صلاة الصبح من طلوع الفجر ما لم تطلع الشمس فإذا طلعت الشمس فأمسك عن الصلاة فإنها تطلع بين قرن شيطان. The meaning is from Abdullah bin Amr, the messenger of Allah. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the time of the noon prayer is when the sun passes the meridian and a man's shadow is the same as the length as his head, and it lasts as long as the time for the afternoon prayer has not come. The time for the afternoon prayer, that is Asr prayer, is as long as the sun has not become pale. The time of evening, that is Maghrib prayer, is as long as the twilight has not ended. The time of the night prayer is up to the middle of the average time, and the time of the morning prayer, that is Subuh, is from the appearance of dawn as long as the sun has not risen. But when the sun has rise, refrain from prayers, for it rise between the horns of the devil. So this hadith clearly explain the times of prayers. We can see clearly about all the prayer times in the hadith above. It explains about the Zuhur, Asar, Maghrib, Isha and Subuh prayer. So that's all from me, and thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Wan Muhammad HAZIM HUSNA bin Muhammad NAWAWI, matric number 1181500. I will continue on the opinion of ulama that related to our topic, which is the beginning and ending of the prayer time from the perspective of four school. But first, we will need to know that there are some jurists that divided the prayer time into two parts, which is ikhtiyari time and daruri time. What is mean by ikhtiyari time? The ikhtiyari time is the prayer time that must be performed if there is no illness, and daruri time is the time specified for emergency reason. And next is I will tell to you about the conclusion of our daily salah, which is Zuhur, and ending with the Subuh, which is Fajr. The conclusion of Zuhur time is that all the sectors agree about the time of the beginning of Zuhur, which is the sun decline, and for the end time of Zuhur, the Jumhur say when the length of a person and his shadow are the same, while Abu Hanifah says when the shadow are twice as long. And next, Asar time, the conclusion that all sectors make is by the set of the sun are full sunset until does not see the sun's slightest form. And the beginning of Asar time by Abu Hanifah in one qawl, when the shadow twice the length of the object. Those who said that Asar begins when the length of the shadow exceeds the object are Abu Yusuf and Muhammad from the Hanafi school, the Shafi'i school and Hanbali. Maliki school said that Asar begins when the shadow equal the length of object and overlap with the last time of Zuhur for just 4 raka'ah. Maliki and Hanbali school also said that the time of Asar ikhtiyari time is until the sun turns yellow, while Shafi'i school says that the shadow are twice the length of the object. Abu Hanifah said the end of Asar time is when the sun set. Next is Maghrib time. The conclusion that the sectors made in Maghrib time is they agree that the time of Maghrib start when the Maghrib enter, when the sun has set. Jumhur ulama says that the time of Maghrib has a period time like other prayers, which is until the disappearance of Ash-Shafa. Ash-Shafa is a red color according to Hanbali school and son of scholar of Shafi'i school, while according to Hanafi school, Ash-Shafa is white color. Maliki's school and some Shafi'i scholars, including new call of Shafi'i, says that the Maghrib time has no period. After that, Isha time. The conclusion that all the scholar made, which is they agree that the beginning of Isha when Ash-Shafa was vanished. The only difference between them was the color of Ash-Shafa. Jumhur school, which are the popular view of Maliki, Shafi'i and Hanbali school, says that the ikhtiyari time for Isha is up to a third of the night. The preferred time for Daruri time is until before the dawn of Sadiq, according to Maliki. It is only a little after the disappearance of Ash-Shafa, while Hanbali says school is the end of a third of a night. While the Hanafi school and Shafi'i school says that it does not say as the time of Daruri because it is in time of prayer until before the dawn of Sadiq. And last part for our daily salah, which is Fajar. The conclusion for Fajar time that is agreed all of ulama, including Mutaakhirin Malikiyah, said that the beginning of Fajar prayer is the at Fajar Sadiq. Only the ulama Mutaqaddimin from Maliki school says that when the Taghlis arrive, which is the dark at the end of the night. Jumhur stated that the end of Fajar is before sunset, but the Maliki school says that the end of Fajar is when it's bright. For Subuh, for Fajar ikhtiyari time, Shafi'i and Hanbali school says that Fajar is start from the Fajar Sadiq until bright, while the Hanbali school says that the time of Daruri is until sunrise, while the Shafi'i school state is it only the time of preferred. That's all from me. Thank you for listening.
Okay, we move to other conceptual discussion. Okay, by Dr. Wan Azhar Wan Ahmad, that is Senior Fellow Director Center for Sharia and Law and Political Science, IKIM. The question of fixed prayer time is only relevant to our lives on earth. If you are no longer on earth, then the question of prayer times no longer becomes relevant. Islam is not difficult. He said that when I was teaching at the Ahmad Ibrahim Kuliah of Laws, IIUM, it is International Islamic University Malaysia, most of my students, if not all, were amazed when I remarked that Muslims are not to pray when travelling long distances on airplanes. That Muslim sages may choose to combine, that is Jama', their prayers if they are working long hours in operation theatres. And that Muslim work from all walks into life may also choose to combine their prayers for reasons other than those mentioned by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now we have successfully launched our first Malaysian and Muslim to our outer space. Part of the achievement, he said that I was and I'm still amazed to learn that this Muslim traveller was made to assume that prayers throughout his 10-day stay hundreds of kilometers above the earth was obligatory. What was even more amazing was a special menu for his extraterrestrial journey had been prepared. All this may have given the impression that the religion of Islam is rigid, uncompassionate and coercive in nature. The reality, however, is quite the opposite. He said that I still hold firm to what I taught my student a few years ago. If the requirement for prayer is relaxed for so long distance journeys on airlines, what more a journey to space? Make no mistake, I am not to be classified as a liberal, conservative, extremist, secularist and such. According to the Quran, prayer prayers are enjoined by unbelievers at fixed time. Surah An-Nisa, Ayah 103. Okay, the key term here is prayer fixed time. In Arabic, we call it kitaban mawquta. Indeed, a Muslim are duty bound to pray 5 times a day at specific durations. And Muslim scholars have done enough to calculate and determine this time respectively, whether using a traditional method of measuring the length of a shadow cast by the sun on the pole, or applying a more accurate measurement in application of astronomical science. In every case, be it prayers at dawn, Fajar, Subuh, midday, the Zohor, late afternoon, that is Asar, Dusk, Maghrib, or evening, Isha. These prayer times are measured and determined by the movement or motion of the earth around the sun. For example, when Muslim in East Java, Indonesia, perform dawn prayers about 4:50 a.m. In local time, Muslim in Malaysia do the same about 8:40 a.m. Obviously, the determining factor here is not the hands of a clock, but rather the movement of the earth as it rotates along its axis relative to the sun. Many seem ignorant of the fact that the question of fixed time is only relevant to our lives on the earth. If we are no longer on earth, then the question prayer times become no longer relevant. The question of time in relation to prayer is only relative to man on earth. In space, however, since man is no longer on earth, time in relation to prayer does not apply. The revolution of earth upon its axis relative to the sun excludes man, for which prayer is obligatory. Man in space is not traveling at the same time, at the same speed as its evolution of the earth along its axis. Religious duties are very much associated with one's location. If one were to travel from one place to another, his or her religious obligations are performed relative to the peculiarities of new destination to movement reach that place. If a Malaysian Muslim usually performs his prayers relative to the time in Malaysia, he or she must abandon this practice once he crosses the border to Thailand, as the time are no longer relative to Malaysia. It is as bad to insist on praying according to the time in Kuala Lumpur while being physically in Bangkok. Therefore, it is as bad to argue that a spaceman may apply the time of his place of departure in order for him to carry out obligatory religious duties in a place not relative to Earth. Another example, a concern or an analogy of air travel. When one flies a long distance, he traverses different time zone. Take, for example, the Kuala Lumpur-London road, which represent more than 12-hour journey covering a distance of more than 10,000 kilometers of a vast body of ocean and land. The flight will have to traverse through 7 different time zones. If one departs KLIA at the 12:50 p.m. at the speed of 800 kph, 15 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft will be over the ocean, followed by the land, mountains, desert, and so on. So he said that, my point is Islam is easy, pragmatic and dynamic. It is never rigid, not extreme. As far as combining the prayers, he said that I believe many have been practicing this method on many occasions prior to the modern era.